If you spend enough time looking into how the world works, you eventually come across this one, very persistent story. It's the idea that a handful of elite, powerful families are secretly running the show from behind the curtain. It's a narrative about old money and about hidden, generational influence. But today, we're going to carefully peel back that myth and instead examine the far more complex and perhaps more unsettling reality of who truly holds power in the 21st century. So that brings us to the central question of our investigation. Who really owns the world? Is it some shadowy group of individuals in a smoke-filled room making decisions that affect us all? Or could the answer be something else entirely? Something that's actually been hiding in plain sight this whole time, in a place most of us would never even think to look. To begin, we really have to address the theory that tends to dominate this conversation. It's this idea you've almost certainly heard before, that a few powerful dynasties, often called the Five Families, are the ones pulling all the strings. We're talking about names like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, and let's be perfectly clear, these families were absolute titans of their time. They were instrumental in shaping the 19th and 20th centuries, building vast empires in banking, in oil, and in heavy industry. Their influence, well, it was undeniable. But that's the crucial word right there, was. Believing that these families still wield that same kind of centralized power today, it's a bit like trying to understand the modern internet by studying a rotary phone. The entire economic operating system of the world has fundamentally changed. To understand who's in charge now, we're going to need a completely new map. And the reason this old model of control fell apart isn't because of some secret plot or a dramatic overthrow. No, it's because of something much more mundane, but also completely unavoidable. It comes down to simple mathematics. To put this in perspective, think about this. At his peak in the early 1900s, John D. Rockefeller's personal fortune was equivalent to nearly 2% of the entire U.S. economy. That is a concentration of wealth that is just on a completely different scale than what we see with today's billionaires. But what happens to a fortune of that magnitude over time? Well, it gets diluted. See, when Rockefeller passed away, his immense wealth was split among his children. And then it was split again among his grandchildren, and then his great-grandchildren. With every single generation, that one massive boulder of wealth gets broken down into smaller and smaller stones, spread across literally hundreds of different heirs. So that concentrated financial firepower, the kind you would need to single-handedly control a modern giant like Apple or Microsoft, for these families, it's just not there anymore. The old kings, for all intents and purposes, have left the throne. So the question is, who took their place? And this is the point where our investigation pivots away from the past and into the present. We're going to look at a new kind of empire, one that is both vastly larger and in many ways far less visible than the old ones. Let me ask you to consider a very simple choice you might make at the grocery store: Coke or Pepsi. It feels like the very definition of corporate competition, doesn't it? Two massive rivals locked in a battle for every dollar you spend. But what if I were to tell you that that choice is, in a very real sense, an illusion? Well, it's because when you actually dig into the public filings, when you look at who owns the largest blocks of shares in both the Coca-Cola Company and PepsiCo, you find something truly startling. Their biggest institutional shareholders are the exact same financial firms. Let that sink in for a moment. So let's meet these new titans. They aren't families with famous last names. They are asset management firms. And at the absolute top of the global financial food chain, you're going to find these three names again and again and again: BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Now, the sheer scale of their operation is, well, it's almost impossible to comprehend. Together, these three firms manage over $20 trillion in assets. It's a number so vast that it almost loses its meaning. So let's try to put that into perspective. That $20 trillion is more than the entire gross domestic product of China. It absolutely dwarfs the entire economy of a major global power like Germany. We're not just talking about a lot of money here. This is a financial force on a geopolitical scale. So the next logical question is, how does this incredible concentration of capital actually function? How does it translate from numbers on a screen into real-world influence? The answer lies in a strategy that effectively creates an illusion of market competition. The technical term economists use for this is horizontal shareholding. It's a remarkably simple but incredibly powerful concept. The idea is, instead of buying a huge stake in one company in a particular industry, you buy significant stakes in all of them, including the supposed competitors. This structure fundamentally changes the incentives for genuine, cutthroat competition. And this isn't just a theory, you can see it everywhere. Take a look at the biggest names in tech. Who are the top institutional shareholders of both Apple and Microsoft? Vanguard and BlackRock. Okay, what about the biggest banks? JP Morgan and Bank of America? It's the same story. It doesn't matter which one wins a particular quarter. The ultimate owners are the same. In this game, the house always wins. Now, it's really vital to understand that this situation isn't the result of some secret backroom conspiracy. It's actually the natural outcome of an incredibly popular investment strategy known as passive investing. For decades, the standard advice for regular people saving for retirement was simple. Don't try to pick winning stocks, just own a piece of the whole market. Well, the big three perfected this model. They take our 401ks and retirement funds and simply buy all the companies in a major index, like the S&P 500. And this is what automatically gives them a huge ownership stake in nearly every major corporation. All right, this is where the story takes a truly mind-bending turn. If these massive firms are so powerful, then who owns them? Who or what is at the very top of this pyramid of power? Let's just break this down very slowly. First, BlackRock is a public company, and its single largest shareholder is its main rival, Vanguard. Okay, but then who owns Vanguard? Well, here's the twist. Vanguard is a private company, and it has a unique structure. It's actually owned by its own investment funds. And who owns those funds? We do, the millions of everyday people with retirement accounts and index funds. It's a completely closed loop. What this all means is that when you trace the ownership all the way to the top, you don't find a shadowy figure. There is no Mr. X sitting in a swivel chair making all the decisions. There is just a system, a corporate structure designed for one single purpose: perpetual automated growth. And this new reality, this system-driven world, it brings us to a final and, well, perhaps a more disquieting conclusion about where power truly resides in the modern age. The truth is, the global economy has simply become too vast, too interconnected, too complex for any single family or even a small group of human beings to control directly. Power hasn't disappeared. It has simply changed its form. Control has shifted away from human ambition and family bloodlines and toward automated systems and profit-maximizing algorithms. And so, we're left with one final, sobering question to consider. Is this new reality any less frightening than the old myths? Is a world directed not by fallible men, but by a cold, impersonal system that is programmed to prioritize growth above all else? Is that world more or less terrifying than the old conspiracy theories ever were? That is something to think about.